What's my name? Who am I? Where am I? I started it, and then he walks away. There we go. Good morning, everybody, wherever you happen to be, as I get my microphone. And I should get my tie so you can see it here. I don't know if you can see where you're at, but can you tell who is on my tie? There's a reason why. What's that? Yeah, Looney Tunes. And my favorite bad guy of all times is on my tie. Nice guess. But it's it really is for a lot of people. But yeah, I really liked him, but not my favorite. Marvin the Martian. I'll get so people can see. He's right there. He's ready to talk into my microphone. You remember who Marvin the Martian was? I was just so intrigued by anybody not remember. I mean, I could give you the background scoop on Marvin the Martian, but I think it all started. He was on Mars or someplace with his telescope trying to look at something, and the Earth was in the way. And so what do? You just blow it up, just get it out of the way. And of course enters Bugs Bunny, and and all the shenanigans begins. And but I'm going to be anyway. This will make sense in a moment as I talk about. Last week I talked about Jesus encountering somebody, and he received what? Oh no! Don't start out with a quiz question, please. He's doing these different healings, and last week we looked at someone who had no voice. Okay, this is Matthew chapter 9. He was mute. He had no voice, and I talked about how when somebody is being saved, they begin to have a voice that they never had before. One of the aspects of salvation that I wanted to point out last time. But I didn't get into a really interesting thing here. I talked about the people said, never has anything like this been seen in Israel. And then Matthew chapter 9, beginning at verse 34. But the Pharisees said, by the ruler of the demons, he casts out the demons. The Pharisees. These were highly educated, accomplished, high standard in the community. Everybody wished that they could be a Pharisee. They were the ones who showed you what a true godly person was supposed to be like. Would you like to have that as your identity in society, that whenever people would see you, they'd go, oh, there goes one of those Pharisees. Yeah, we wish we could be like you. And we thank you for demonstrating for us what that really good godly person looks like. And they watch someone being transformed by the love of God, and their response is what? He's not just a demon, but the prince of demons. One of the things that I've always liked about the Bible is that it's so full of bad guys. Do you have a favorite bad guy in the Bible? Or gal, for that matter? You can't say gal anymore. I got reprimanded for using the word gal. You're not allowed to use that anymore. But bad person in the Bible. Who's your favorite? Who?
Judas.
Judas is at the top of a lot of people's lists. You go all the way back to Cain. We start out early with Cain killing his brother. There's the Pharaoh of Egypt, and he set kind of a whole new standard for evil. Of course, yeah.
King Saul.
King Saul. He had his issues. He certainly did. There was a Delilah. Don't want to leave the ladies out. Remember good old Delilah? I was sad about that because I always thought that's such a beautiful name, Delilah. And she kind of ruined it for a lot of people, though it's sort of come back in vogue, I think, because people don't know their Bibles like they used to. Is she still on the radio? Still on? You probably don't know who I'm talking about. When I used to travel a lot at night, I would listen to catch her on. She had a real nice show, as I recall. So you've got all these people. The Bible is really good at saying, let's be as clear and honest as we can about what it means to be a human being. And all the things that make us so good and wonderful, and the things that really make us frightening and horrible. And so it's worth our time, I think, to look at these people that demonstrate how far away from the love of God we can possibly go. In fact, I would suggest that when we think about these Pharisees that are confusing Jesus with Satan himself, could I possibly have anything in common with him? You hear me say this a lot. Whenever you read a Bible story, you ask, what do I have in common with this person? You know, what the person that has no voice, or the person that's not able to see clearly, or walk, or go where they need to go, or whatever it might be. And here Matthew points out that we're focusing on these people that desperately need the love of God, but you've also got these people over here that don't know the difference between Satan and the Son of God. What's going on in their lives? What is it about their mind and their heart that lead them to have that kind of perspective on things? You know what I'm talking about when I refer to the big quit, the big resignation? We've seen this. It's been in the news recently because researchers have studied what happened last year in particular. More people, a larger percentage of the population, quit their job than in any time in the history of this nation. And so economists and psychologists, all kinds of people have really been researching what it is that brought this about, and what do we take away from the big quit, the big job quit, resigning from jobs, more than any time in history. And what they have discovered so far is they're not simply going, I hate. It's certainly connected with the pandemic. It made our lives so difficult, our jobs more difficult, and they didn't simply get fed up and say, I give up on my job and my life, and I'm going to go and be whatever. No, what they did was it forced them to step back and think to themselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why is this really the lifestyle, the career job for me? And apparently a lot of people are saying it's not just that I hate my job, but this just doesn't feel right. And so what they're doing is they're leaving their jobs and they're going after different kinds of jobs. Or they're keeping the same job, but they're doing it in a noticeably different way. And when I hear about things like this, it makes me stop and think, how well do we know ourselves? And then, am I alone on this? I have known too many people, and they're at the latter stages of their life, and when you hear about their story, especially those that you have known personally, and I've thought, they've never lived the life that God intended them to live. Could have been due to pressure from their family, their friends, society, whatever. The lack of resources or education or knowledge or whatever. But their entire life, they were stuck in a life that was never meant for them. And my heart is always broken for those people. And I'm thinking, how do you end up with a life, with a lifestyle, a career, a job, such that you cannot tell the difference between the most evil being in the universe and the one that shows up to save us? In some ways, this is an invitation rather than just simply going, boy, those Pharisees are idiots. Let's go on to another verse. Stop and think, how does somebody end up like that? And could it be that even in my own life, there are things that I don't totally get? I think part of the problem is we do not see ourselves and the world as clearly as we think we do. I heard an interesting comment the other day, and it goes like this: the world around you was put together by people no smarter than you are. Let me say that again. The world around you, you think of all the things that we enjoy and use and such. The world around us was put together by people no smarter than you are. I had to think about that when I heard that. And the more I thought about it, I thought, that's right. If it wasn't, there are a lot of people no smarter than you and me than we happen to be, but, they're dedicated, they work very hard, they acquire a lot of information about a particular area, and they accomplish wonderful things to the benefit of everyone else. Do I see myself kind of behind the world, that somehow the world is smarter, prettier, more talented, whatever, than I could ever possibly be? Or could it be that we all have more in common than we ever thought possible? And then there's those of us that when we look at the world and all that's done and what we've contributed to it, we conclude that we're better than everyone else. That somehow I'm just naturally smarter. You ever known anybody like this? They were always, whatever the issue was, they always had to come up with the best comment. Oh, I'll tell you how this is. Good thing we have masks on right now. I see a lot of heads. They always have to have the last word because obviously I am naturally more intelligent than anyone you'll ever meet. I should have a higher standard of living, a higher income, more influence, more control over other people. God forbid that I didn't have that. It's really in everybody else's best interest. You meet some people that are so humble, but then they're kind of balanced out by the people that are always wondering when will everybody get out of the way so that I can show them how the world is supposed to go. I think one of the issues is that we become so invested in this world. So much of our stuff, our money, our time, our talent, our resources, everything that we put into this world, we become so invested in it that we get to where we cannot see the morality and the ethics of this world as clearly as we once could. I mean, the Pharisees, they were wealthy. We know this. They were wealthy people. They were so invested in this. And I've got to protect my investment, right? Anything that I do to protect my investment is obviously the right thing to do. Now, I know that it benefits me, but it just kind of works out that way, and I'm okay with that. But I've got to do what's in everybody's interest in order to protect that which is mine. And I get to where I cannot see morality and ethics clearly. I've said this, I know at least a couple times before, and I say it again. We get to that point where we go, if it's legal, then it's right. I can do this because there's no law against it. We're good to go. And we get into the most horrible problems because of this. And I think I've mentioned too, there's a little bit of a gender difference here. When something goes amiss and there's been some kind of physical, emotional injury, men want to do what? They want to make it right. They got to fix it. They got to punish those that messed it up and get everything back on track. Women, on their hand, their first thought is, how can I be helpful? What is it that people need right now? And now there are obvious exceptions to this, and we need kind of a balance between this. But sometimes I wonder, no, I'm not go down that road. Whenever I start talking about differences between women and men, I get in trouble. So, but it's worth thinking about the roles that society puts on us. This is what a real woman is supposed to be like. This is what a real man is supposed to be like. And we end up dissociating important parts of ourselves until finally I can't see other people clearly because I can only see you in one way. And because Jesus doesn't fit my idea of what we're supposed to be doing here, I can come up with the most crazy idea you could possibly imagine. I love that question about if Jesus came in and sat down, joined us Sunday morning, how long would it take us to recognize this was the Son of God? Would we even notice he was different than anybody else? What would we look for? Or would we finish the morning going, I wonder what's wrong with that guy? He didn't seem quite right. He's not like the way we're supposed to be. These Pharisees were so convinced that they were better than everyone else that they ended up blinding themselves. They were not able to see other people in the same way that God does. And they, whenever I meet somebody whose job is to point out everybody's failings and shortcomings and where they miss the mark, I think of how we enable ourselves to bring that blindness upon ourselves. And I mean, when was the last time you ever heard somebody go, thank you so much for pointing out my shortcomings? Yeah, I had no idea my life was messed up. And of course, there's the Pharisees, and I guess one of my main points this morning is that they don't get it. To me, a normal person goes, I have good days, I have bad days. And I hope you don't find out about the bad days because I'm really embarrassed about it. But they would go, no bad day. For them, a bad day is I didn't catch enough people misbehaving and get them back on track. And they look at Jesus, and what do they see? They see somebody doing something they have never seen before and something that they have never done before. I found myself thinking about the words of the Apostle Paul. In Romans, he says, for while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. Indeed, rarely will anyone die for a righteous person. Though perhaps for a good person, someone might actually dare to die. But God proves his love for us in that while we still were sinners, Christ died for us. What do you say in the Sermon on the Mount? Love your enemies. Love your enemies. The Pharisees did not get that. And they would come up with the most twisted mental gymnastics to avoid seeing other people clearly and including themselves. And again, I love imagining, by the grace of God, we end up there in heaven, and somebody said, well, what were you doing on earth? Oh, I was one of those Pharisees that couldn't tell the difference between Jesus and Satan. But by the grace of God, I was able to turn that around. So there was this elderly woman, and she, it's a really little small town, and she comes to the preacher, and she says, I suppose you heard about my husband, he passed away, and I want to have a funeral service for him, and I'd like for you to do it. And I would really like it if you would tell everybody that my husband had been a saint, that he was a saint. And the preacher said, look, I really appreciate you coming to me. I care about everyone in our town, including you all, but I knew your husband. Everybody in this little town knew your husband, and everybody knew that he was a liar, he was a cheat, he was a real scoundrel, he abused everyone he ever met. He was really a horrible, horrible man. And I'm sorry, I can't say that. She said, you don't understand. I insist that we have this service, and I really want you to tell everybody that he was a saint. He said, I am so sorry, but I can't do that. And she said, okay, look here. You know, wealthy family, tell you what, if you will do this for me, I will donate $50,000 toward your church's building fund. $50,000 towards the building fund if I'll tell everybody that he was a saint. She said, yes. So he thought about it. He said, okay, I'll do it. And so they had the funeral service, and not many people came, but a few people came. And the preacher got up, and he said, there he is. He was a liar. He was a cheater. He was a scoundrel. He was the meanest person that's probably ever lived in this town and abused everyone he ever met. And the widow was sitting there looking up. And he said, but compared to his wife, he was a saint. Our perception of who we are, that's something that we should offer to God to make clean, I think. Heavenly Father, I pray that we would take the time to think about where we are in this world, how much we have invested in everything that we have a hand on. Help us to be honest with ourselves, and help us to see the extent to which we cannot love our enemy because we are too in love with ourselves. Help us to do that in Jesus' name. Amen. I invite you to take your hymnals and turn to 381, Shepherd Like a Shepherd Lead Us. We'll sing the last verse in chorus, or the first verse in chorus. We'll do one as we finish our service, and I'll say goodbye to everybody. Wherever you are, I pray you'll have a wonderful Lord's Day and a great week. God bless you all. Bye for now.